Now let's shift our attention for the first time ever to NBA. We've never discussed NBA, even though it's only our third episode. So, we're gonna take the time to discuss that. We're from LA, so we know Clippers and Lakers more than anyone else, and we know that they suck more than anyone else. Um, but yeah, anything you got for me regarding the NBA?
Well, right now, as we look at the standings today, we see the Celtics and the Pelicans have the two best records in each conference. And
Yeah.
I find it interesting that the Celtics, all the turmoil they had in the offseason with the head coach Ime Udoka, and then they replaced
Hmm.
the coach, and then
Hmm.
they signed Danilo Gallinari, he tears his ACL, but they
Yeah.
still have the core from their team that made it to the NBA Finals last year, and they're a really good team.
Yeah.
And I feel like they have to be, of course, one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to win the championship this year.
Yep. Hmm.
In the Western Conference, I was saying preseason because I really like the Pelicans because their team last year just looked very cohesive and they looked like they had a good unit. And then they're adding Zion Williamson, who has some of the best talent in the
Finally, yeah.
NBA, finally after being injured all the time. But
Yeah.
they added him and they're having a really good year. And I just I'm really intrigued to see what happens. I mean, I know the Warriors are struggling right now, but I still you can never count them out. I don't really think they're putting their full effort into it right now
Yeah.
because early in the year they're an older squad. I mean, I mean, I still think that they have to be one of the favorites to win, even though they're so far down in the standings. But it's also crazy
Hmm.
to me how bad their bench is compared to their starting lineup. I mean,
Yeah.
they have one of the best starting lineups of all time and one of the worst or the worst bench unit of all time, and that's why they're really
Yeah.
struggling. And they're also really struggling on the road. They are 2-11 on the road and 12-2 at home. So I mean, it's kind of been interesting for the Warriors this year. They might
Hmm.
have a little bit of a championship hangover, you might say, but
Yeah.
I think that they'll be in it at the end. I'm interested to see how the Clippers do. I know Kawhi
Yeah. He's
um
back,
tore his
kind of.
ACL and then
Yeah.
he's back, but he's still kind of iffy. They say the surgery might have not gone as well as he hoped it would,
Yeah.
and he's still a little iffy. He's been like load managing his way as he always does, but a little more than normal. But they're still above 500. They're a dangerous team. I think their roster has the most talent in the NBA, but they're the Clippers, so
Yeah.
that's enough said right there. But who knows? I mean, they might win. Um, what else? What anything for you?
Um, yeah, I'd like to talk about the Celtics for a little bit because, like as you said, they're top of the Eastern Conference right now. The Celtics, obviously a powerhouse. They've been a powerhouse for a couple of years now. They went to the NBA Finals last year, unfortunately lost to the Warriors, but at least they made it there. It'd been a while since that had happened. They've been consecutively going to the playoffs, but just being shut out by teams. So it was nice to see them make it to the finals. But going back to last year's finals, I always, go watching the Eastern Conference finals where it was the Celtics and the Heat. I wholeheartedly believe that the Heat not only wanted it more, but I felt like they deserved it more. And I felt like their attitude towards the game and how they would come out every night and play was just a little different than the Celtics. Whereas the Celtics, as we see now, they kind of have like an easy ride of things. They're the top of the conference, they're the favorites, they're the powerhouse. They might even be the best team in the NBA. But in my opinion, I have yet to see something from the Celtics that makes me go, okay, like, yeah, this is definitely one of the best teams in the NBA. Like I feel like comparing them to a team like the Pelicans or the Warriors is like justified. I mean, we've been waiting a while for the Pelicans to have a full, like a healthy lineup and a healthy roster backed by Zion Williamson. And now we can finally see, the skills and the plays that Zion was ready to give us as soon as he graduated from college. And I look at that team and I look at the age, how young the team is, and the despite them being so young, the chemistry that they have is, I feel like, unmatched across the board throughout the entire league. I mean, you could even argue that the Lakers and teams like the Bucks have really good chemistry, but even then they're not really competing as much as they need to be with that much chemistry. And then again, like the Warriors, I wholeheartedly believe the Warriors will win the finals this year again. They are the best team in my eyes. Jordan Poole and Steph Curry and Draymond Green. I feel like that's just an unstoppable trio as it is, let alone their bench, which is also unstoppable as well. Like they have assets, they have tools that they can use, whether they're the first seed in the Western Conference or barely making it into the playoffs. They are a playoff team. They are an offseason team. They tend to grind. They always do better in the offseason. That's why they won the finals last year. And I feel like that's why they'll do the same thing this year as well.
But yeah, I think the West is definitely going to be interesting this year because I feel like there's not like one team that's very, very good, but I feel like there's just a lot of
Yeah,
quality teams.
absolutely. Yeah.
Because like you look at the Mavericks and like they're a good team, but I don't think that they can win because they only have one guy and that's Luka and he can
Exactly.
lead
And you
the
have to
show.
think about you have to also think about like the injuries that's involved as well.
Yes,
If Luca goes down one game
it's
and
over
out
for
for the
them.
season, the Mavs season is
Yeah,
over as well. And they just have
yeah.
to accept that. And I feel like, the realism of that is that, if you don't have at least two or three guys, then, you could be seeing a very downhill season.
Yeah, I think you need at least two. It's good to have three, but I think you need at least two star, like top 20, top 30 kind of caliber players to
Yeah.
win the finals. And I mean, I just think it's kind of interesting because the Grizzlies always impress me. They've been without Desmond Bane for a portion of the year. John
Hmm.
Morant's gotten a little banged up, but they still just win games. I mean, that team has one of the best coaches and one of the best like just like locker rooms and cultures and chemistries because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter who they put in, they just win games. And I don't think in the playoffs they're going to be able to beat teams like the Warriors or I feel like the Nuggets might give them trouble, the Clippers might give them trouble, maybe the
Hmm.
Pelicans might give them trouble, but I just don't think in the playoffs they're going to be able to like stand with those teams. I mean, I think they can make it to the Western Conference Finals maybe, but I don't think they're going to get to the finals or win the championship. I still think they're a very good team. If they got another star,
Yeah.
then they're definitely in championship caliber, but the Nuggets have really intrigued me because they're third right now in the conference. They're a good team. I really like them because I mean, they have Jamal Murray,
Yeah,
Jokic,
exactly.
Michael Porter
Jokic
Jr. They have a ton
especially.
of talent.
Hmm.
So I really like them, but it just the West is kind of a crapshoot. I mean, they're just like a lot of good teams, and until the Warriors show that they're not good enough, I still think you got to roll with the Warriors just overall in the postseason. I mean, right now they're not playing good, so right now definitely not. But I feel like
Yeah.
in a few months' time, especially the playoffs are very long in the NBA. So if the Warriors are able to get the 4 or 5 seed, they have literally the playoffs last for 2 or 3 months. It
Exactly.
gives them a lot of time to just build. I mean, they already have chemistry because they've been together for 10 years, but it allows them to just
Mm.
build chemistry and just like continue to develop their team. I mean, they're trying to figure out their bench. They have 3 months to find their bench. There's not a ton of urgency there. I mean, they don't want to make it in the play in, but let's say that in the first round they have to face like, I mean, I feel like the thing in the West is like I don't think the difference between the 1 seed and the 5 seed is gonna be that big of a deal. So if you're the 8 seed versus the 4 seed, I don't really think it's that big of a deal in the
Yeah,
playoffs because
exactly.
it's like you're gonna either play the Suns or you're gonna play the
Yeah.
Pelicans. Like
Yeah, like
they're
a few years ago, with
yes,
both the conferences, it was such a big deal whether or not you were the one seed or the eight seed.
yes,
Especially now for the Western, it literally doesn't matter because
yeah,
they all match up well against one another and they all put up
yeah,
good points in their respective fields.
yeah,
So yeah, I agree with that 100%.
yeah. And I feel like one thing we got to mention is the Timberwolves have been very disappointing this year. Right now
I
they're
mean,
11th, but I feel like I don't think that anyone rational people expected them to be championship caliber. But
no.
I never liked the Rudy Gobert edition. It made no sense in my mind. I don't know why they did it, but they
Yeah.
did it. But to be not even in the playoffs right now, I mean, to be the 11th seed in the West right now, I feel like
Yeah.
behind the Jazz, who are supposed to be like rebuilding. I mean, the Kings have had a good year, but behind the Kings, I mean, I feel like the Timberwolves to be 13 and 14 right now, it's a little disappointing, but I wasn't expecting much for them. I mean, I know Cat got hurt, but
Yeah.
I don't like their culture. I feel like it's almost the opposite of the Grizzlies. They're kind of front runners, you know, like they get up in the game and they feel comfortable and they just can't close games. So I don't really like the Timberwolves too much, but the Lakers
Yeah.
have been quite the story this year, starting out like what
And I
2 and
mean,
10.
yeah, it's crazy how we talk
Yeah,
about how like, it's important to have like two or three guys on your
yeah.
team. It's so that, if one gets injured, then, you'll at least have a team. For the Lakers, they have a literal team of guys and it doesn't even matter.
It's
I
not shooting.
mean,
That's the problem. I'm saying that's been their problem the whole time, and they've been too stubborn to fix it. I mean, they have LeBron, they have AD, they have Russ, but the problem is like their role guys.
Yeah.
are not what fits with LeBron. For LeBron, you need guys that shoot. Even his team with the Cavs, that was a terrible team. They made it to the
Yeah.
finals in a weak Eastern Conference because he was surrounded by shooters. And
Even
you need,
even Kevin Love was more of a
yeah,
shooter than
even
people
coming
think.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. They had Kevin Love and Green, and they had guys that could knock down shots. But
Yeah.
like this team, they all their role guys can't shoot at a high enough clip. And that one guy that they signed, they waived, like Matt Ryan or whatever, that like hit
Yeah.
that clutch three in the second game. They dropped him. So, I mean, I feel like the Lakers, they play. I like what they're doing with their playing style in the sense that they're giving a lot more effort than they did last year per se. Like they're really like working hard and they're trying to wear down other teams. They played really well against the Bucks that one game. They won on the road in Milwaukee, which was impressive.
Yeah, that
But
was a good game.
yeah, I just feel like considering the amount that it took them to win that kind of game, it's gonna be tough for them to. They might sneak into the play in. They might even make it out of the first round if they make the playoffs. But I just don't think like you look at the depth of other teams in the NBA, like the Pelicans, they don't have per se like LeBron James or Anthony Davis, but they're a better
Hmm.
team and they have
Yeah.
guys that they have role players. Like Jose Alvarado is a role player, but he shows up. He's great for the chemistry. He gives
Yeah,
it his full
exactly.
effort. He can
Hmm.
shoot a little bit. Not a great shooter, but he can shoot a little bit. Like you need guys like that, and I just feel like the Lakers are kind of very top heavy, and their depth has been exposed again. And
Yeah.
I feel like they might make the playoffs, but I feel like it's a little bit. I feel like considering you have Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Russell Westbrook, I feel like it's a big failure that this is happening right now. But I mean, who knows? I mean, they could turn it around. I don't see it with their shooting right now and the players that they have, the personnel. They had guys that were going to come back or weren't injured, but they don't really have anyone coming back. If they make a trade, but they can't really make a trade. They don't have any picks to trade. They don't have anything to give up. They have no value. They have no players with value besides those star players. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's gonna be tough for them, but they might sneak into the back end of the playoffs, maybe win a series, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely keep up with all the, NBA news and NBA talk because, the NBA season is so long, much like the MLB season, that it truly allows like any team to be horrible at the beginning of the season, but then
Like
just
the
start
Celtics
picking
last
it
year.
up. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So,
yeah,
anything could truly happen. Maybe the Lakers go on a hot streak with the good the talent that they have,
yeah.
but yeah, it could go either way with the NBA, but it's we're I yeah, I still like to think that we're in the beginning of the season. I like to think it's like Christmas is kind of like the middle point, like Christmas to about like the middle of January is like that middle segment.
Yeah, they've only played like
So
25, 30 games so far, so like there's still a lot to
yeah.
be played for. I mean, you look in the East and like the Celtics are up by a decent margin. They have some separation, but like the Bucks are always going to be there. The Cavs have been very impressive this year.
Hmm.
I like that team. I feel like Donovan Mitchell was a big addition
Yeah,
for them. I'm
Donovan
surprised he
Mitchell
didn't get
was
traded to the Knicks.
definitely a
Yeah,
good pick.
the
Yeah.
Knicks just sold on that. They fumbled the bag on that one, but the Nets have come back a little bit into the picture. I mean, that team is still kind of the chemistry is terrible and they still have like a lot of issues, but their
Yeah.
talent is unquestionable. I mean, they have really good talent. I mean, the same thing with the 76ers, like they have a ton of talent, but who knows how they're going to do in the playoffs, how James Harden's going to do
Yeah.
in the playoffs.
Yeah,
But
with the Nets, when it was Harden, Irving, and Durant all on the Nets, like I really wanted them to win the finals, and because I thought that like that team and like those players were like the guys, like Kevin Durant
yeah,
and James Harden had already played before, and then the addition of Kyrie Irving instead of their usual Russell Westbrook when they were all playing on the Thunder, I felt like was interesting, and I was like, oh, they kind of just recreated that Oklahoma City team from like a decade ago. Got it. But yeah, I'm curious to see what Harden does with the Sixers, especially with Embiid by his side. But again, anything can happen from about now to April, May. And that's when, stuff really starts get heating. It starts heating up. And yeah, I feel like the big thing this year is injuries. I feel like there are going to be a lot of teams who maybe go on a hot streak, maybe even lead certain parts of the conference. But I feel like a lot of players will be going down. I feel like LeBron is due for a really big injury,
you say
and
that.
I mean, if it happens, then point me.
Oh my
but
God, we
and
gotta
we
knock
will
on wood for
reference
this, bro.
we'll reference
Jesus.
this video, but I just feel like there's bound to be at least a few players in the league that, end up kicking
No.
it a little
You just
bit.
feel like the injuries this year are going to play a bigger part than prior years, especially because the West is so impacted right now
Exactly,
that
yeah.
the separation between teams is very small. So if you have an injury, it's really going to hurt them. And
Yeah.
usually teams in the regular season, they lose a guy, one of their star players for a few weeks. It's not that big a deal because they can still maintain their record in the
Mhm.
standings. But I think this year it's going to be a little bit tougher. And yeah, I mean, these teams are going to have to play well, especially and put a lot of effort into the regular season. Who knows how tired they're going to be for the postseason just to get into the playoffs. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's still early. I mean, nothing's been defined yet. I mean, last year the Celtics were under 500 like halfway in the year, and then
Yeah,
they ended with
precisely.
the second best record in the NBA, and they made it to the finals. So
Yeah.
who knows? Honestly, I mean, nothing's like right now. The Heat are 13 and 15. They could make it. I mean, you just never know. But
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
And can we talk about like all these new trophies that they're like coming up with? Like I saw something about like a Michael Jordan trophy and how they're also doing like they're giving a trophy to the team with like that finishes with the best record.
I didn't
Did
see
I
any of this, but that sounds a little bit weird. I mean, I don't know what they're trying to do, but
I don't know if
especially in the
that's
NBA, it
true.
makes no sense. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure the Michael Jordan thing is true because I remember seeing a picture of the trophy and I was all like, huh, but I didn't know what it was for and I don't know what player would get it or what team would get it. But over the last few years, have you noticed how like they've been coming up with like more and more trophies in the NBA to like give their players as if like their players are like undervalued by like the NBA?
No, dude. I mean, I feel like it's weird. Like talking about just like that kind of stuff. I feel like in the NBA, the regular season is like one of the least important in many sports. I
Yeah,
feel like it actually means nothing because the playoffs are so long and dragged out. We have
yeah.
4 7 game series. It doesn't really matter that much. But I feel like, for example, like you look at the MLB and I feel like they almost should give like regular season trophy for like who finishes with the best record because like
Hmm.
I'm not just saying that because I'm a Dodgers fan, but I feel like in the MLB, you play 162 games, and then your season is decided by a 5 game series, one 5 game series. Or last year, the Dodgers, the year before, had 106 wins, and they had to play in the wild card game against an 87 win Cardinals team. And if they lost that game, they would have been eliminated from the playoffs after winning 20 more games than the Cardinals that year. I just feel like the MLB, in that sense, maybe should think about like what the Premier League does, just like giving the best record, the team with the
Yeah.
best record, a trophy, and then still doing the postseason. But you can see in the MLB that the postseason is such a crapshoot because
Hmm.
you see teams that like the Phillies this year that barely made the playoffs and made it all the way to the World Series. But like in the NBA, you don't usually see that. I mean, in the NBA, it's been the Warriors, the Cavs, and both of those teams have been in the top four of the standings every year that they made it. And
Hmm.
then you even look last year. I mean, it was the Warriors who were, I think the 2 seed in the West, and
Yeah.
then or maybe
Hmm.
the 3 seed maybe, but it
Yeah.
was the Warriors and then the Celtics were the 2 seed. Like the NBA is always the top 5 seeds make it to the finals just
Yeah.
because you when you play that many games in the playoffs, when you play 4 7 game series, it really weeds out the bad teams from the good teams, and you can't really have like a fluke.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why it's easier in the NBA for these dynasties to form. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's an interesting topic. I don't know. That's kind of weird.